I do this a little bit different than Jen. She also has an intro that she does. And I was like, what am I supposed to do for an intro? Because like I never really did an intro before. So I decided that I'm going to go old school here. I feel a little bit like I'm in trouble.
Okay, you're not in trouble. You just heard what you heard. And I sit down to edit this recording and I'm like, Ashley, if people don't know who Abby is, how are they going to know who Abby is once they start watching and or listening?
I got stage fright. Like, because when I used to do the podcast, I would always record an intro, but it was just audio, you know? And so I wouldn't really be thinking about that I needed to say something at the beginning. And so I wasn't thinking about that. And I was just like, oh yeah, Jen usually does an intro and I'm not going to do one. So sorry. In episodes past, whenever we've interviewed someone from the team, like I've been the one to interview them. And I, at one point, told Jen that I wanted to interview Abby, and then it took me like 6 months to actually make it happen. But I think part of the reason why I wanted to do that is because, we all met Abby at the same time. But when we kind of look at like someone joining the team, I feel very much like the mom and like needing to kind of like look at our team dynamic and the people that are coming in and out. And part of what I do for making is really look at the person as a whole and like not just their skill set. And I really like to kind of get into understanding like why they are where they are and like a little bit of like, their story. And doesn't really matter if they're a maker or not. Like I want to know like what they think they're good at and like what parts of them make them tick, so that when I think about bringing them into the team, I don't really look at trying to fit them in an exact position. Like I very much want to let them kind of choose their own adventure. Part of wanting to interview Abby was that has always been kind of like my perspective, is like wanting to know more of Abby's story. And so I felt like, yeah, I wanted to talk to her. Plus, let's just be honest, like Abby is one of the funniest people. Like she's so funny. She's so funny. And I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to hear her story. I like all of her like little inflections about, I can't get enough of it. Like she comes with us on trips and stuff. And that's like my favorite part of the trip. And yeah, when we went to New York together in January, she just, every day she had me like rolling. I mean, both of us, we were just like, and it's so much fun hanging out with someone significantly younger than ourselves. I feel like I feel younger being around Abby.
So today's guest, as Ashley said, sat down with Ashley, and Abby is just such a special person. I mean, like we hang out outside of work, like, and craft and just like chill. I know Abby will be on the podcast again because she has a lot of really cool things that she's done in her life, and you all touch on some of that during this time, but I know that there's more that we want to talk about, so I'm really excited about that. So yeah, I guess without further ado,
here's Abby.
Abby, everyone.
Ask Abby.
Enjoy.
I want you to take me back to the beginning, like back in the earliest parts of your life that you can remember, where that seed was planted for your creative journey. Often that isn't actually a creative act itself. Oftentimes that's just being in a space where you are exposed to something that stirred something inside of you. And I want you to take me back to there, like describe where you were, if you want to, like share a little bit of your childhood, like, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the journey of your life, because I want to hear your story. And I think connection is built on people seeing something in someone else's story that they can resonate with. So take me back to the very beginning.
I'm not sure if I have so much like a moment where I can pinpoint when the creative seed was planted, as much as I feel like it was kind of always there. Like when I was small, like little, a child, I was very into, like, my earliest memories are me caring about like what my outfit looked like, how I was getting dressed, going shopping. I remember like once a year before school, because my parents were separated, I think my mom was in charge of my outfits and my dad was in charge of my brother's outfits, which is very like classic. But my mom and I would go shopping and I would get to pick out a couple outfits for school, even though I had a uniform school. So it like was kind of pointless. I think she just wanted to get me excited for like the school season. And I remember one year I went to the store and she was like, you can pick out your own outfit. And I picked out, I remember the outfit so well. I picked out this neon blue, which is wild color choice, like ruffle skirt with the matching neon blue top that had a crab on it that said, I'm crabby. Because I also had an attitude from like very early days. And I was obsessed with it. I was like, oh my gosh. I had a birthday party the next weekend. I was like, I'm going to wear this to the birthday party and everyone's going to think I have the cutest outfit there. And it was like a joke amongst my immediate family that like, I was the fashion girl. I was told all the time, I was like, this is not a fashion show, but it always was like to me. And so that was definitely my earliest memory of being creative. And when I started crafting again, like in my 20s, I was thinking back and I was like, wow, I've never had an artistic hobby as a child. But then when I thought back, like, yeah, I cared a lot about fashion and outfits and stuff, but I also was like crafting all the time. And I didn't even like think about it. Cause I think when you're a kid, you're in school and like crafting and arts is kind of like a normal part of your life. Like it's not something you have to go out of your way to explore. I think there's like something that's very readily available to children. And so like I was in art class in school, of course, but like my stepmom, whenever it was a rainy day, we had like a box in the garage that was just full of crafts and we would just craft on the rainy days, which I remember being so excited, like what's in the rainy day box? And my mom would take me to the Michael. We still go to the same Michaels too. My mom would take me to the Michaels and I would pick out like a little craft kit. And I remember once I got like, I forgot what it's called. It's not rug tufting, but it's like when you use the hook to make like the shaggy rugs.
Latch hook.
And I got like, yeah, latch hook. I got a latch hook kit. And it was like this tie-dye rug and I was obsessed. Like it was all I cared about in that moment. So I think being creative is something I've always naturally been drawn towards. But then, you know, like as you grow up and you get in middle school, you get in high school, it's like what society tells you your priorities should be kind of changes. And my family was very like school academic focused. So I think like without even being told, I took a natural step back and was like, oh, well, I mean, I did music in like middle school and stuff, but I didn't really think like that was creative, even though now obviously it is. But I kind of like took a step back and was like, oh, what's important actually is like, I go to college. So actually I'm going to do all this math and all this STEM and all of these hard classes without like realizing that like I was really desperately wanting a creative outlet and like I was a creative person. I was just trying to mute that part of myself. And then when I got to college, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. And then I started crafting and then now I'm here like 4 years later. But yeah, I can't pinpoint the moment as much as I can pinpoint just that was always important to me.
Yeah.
Especially fashion.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom had a box though, like in the garage, of craft supplies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
my stepmom.
Where do you think? Okay, so your stepmom. Did you ever have any like grandparents or neighbors or maybe an art teacher that you saw something and you were like, oh, that's very cool. Like I want to do that.
That's a good question. I don't know. All of my grandparents are all very artistic, which is another thing I didn't process as a child. Like my grandmother paints. And then my stepmom's grandmother did everything under the sun. Like we have these insane needle points that she did like before she passed that are just really beautiful. And then my grandma, actually I do have a moment. So I was obviously very into fashion and everything. And I was also very like short. My whole life I've been short. And so I would always have to get my clothing altered. But my grandma, my dad's mom, would just sew it for me. And so one day I was in her room and she had her sewing machine out and she was hemming things for me and something just clicked. I was like, oh, I need to learn how to sew. Like, this is what I want to learn how to do. And I don't know, when you're a kid, like your thoughts are fleeting. So I didn't like follow through in it. I mean, my grandma, trust, she attempted to try and teach me how to use a sewing machine. But it never stuck. And that's definitely one of my regrets. Because one, I wish I had that time with my grandma to share that with her. But two, like now I want a sewing machine so bad and I don't even know what I had. So I think that's the moment. I have like such vivid memories of my grandmother and her sewing. And then upon reflection, vivid memories of like pretty much every woman in my life being very artistic. And I think that that definitely influenced me for sure.
I knew there was a moment. I knew there was one. There always is.
Yeah.
I think that those moments are not necessarily like, you know, in your case, ones where you adopt that thing. But what it does is it opens up this part of your brain to realize like, oh, that thing exists. Like that is something that's out there and it stays there. And then it's like, as you get older and you value different things or you have time or whatever, that's always was there. That always was there. And you kind of, it comes back around. I want to explore the facets of Abi and share that with the world. You know, you are an engineer at making, but there's all these different parts of who you are that come together to make this really amazing person that is both creative and technical at the same time. And I want to bring some of that to the surface. So, one of the first things that I noticed about you was this, I will say leadership qualities, but it was through the lens of like confidence and just like the way you dressed and the way you like showed up at these events that we were at, which we'll get to that story in a minute. A few minutes ago when you were talking about going to college for STEM and things like this, and then being like, wait, what am I doing? You know, I'm a creative person. Like I resonate with that a lot. That was very much my story as well. Walk me through that.
I went to school at Davidson College in North Carolina. It's like this really, really small school in this really, really small town, like 30 minutes outside of Charlotte. So I'm from Miami for context to those listening. It was quite the change. It was quite the adjustment. I didn't go with any particular major in mind. I mean, I had it like ever since I was little, I was like, I'm going to be a CEO and I'm going to lead a business. And so I thought I was going to do econ, but that did not pan out. I was there actually under the scholarship called the Posse Scholarship run by the Posse Foundation, which is really great. And if anyone is listening and has a child that might go to college soon, I really suggest that you look up the scholarship because it basically just takes people from different cities. So there's different factions in every city. And mine is Posse Miami, obviously. And it sends a group of 10 kids to the same college. And the idea is that like you have a group of people there to support you. And it's usually like, you know, historically like communities that have been marginalized, communities that it's been difficult for them to get into higher education in the first place. So it's an amazing opportunity. They do amazing work. It's full tuition. So I really would suggest people look into it. And this whole point of the scholarship is also like, it's a leadership scholarship. So the idea is like Posse scholars are usually leaders on their campus, which I have found to be true. Just when I was there as a first year meeting all the older Posse scholars, they were always doing like big stuff on campus. And I was like, whoa. So the leadership aspect is definitely there when I began college. Like the scholarship and kind of the people that I was meeting even before school started planted this idea in my head that was like, oh, if I go to college, I can do things. Like I can be involved on campus. And I wasn't super involved in college or in high school. I'm kind of anxious. So I was always kind of like, what if I run for a position and then I lose? Like, oh my God, that would be so embarrassing. And I've grown now and I know that that's not embarrassing. But as a teen, you know, everything is embarrassing. So I didn't hold like any leadership positions or anything. I kind of just had like, I don't know, like a loud personality. And I guess it like shined through in the interviews. I don't know. Because of some older Posse scholars that I had met, they were like, oh, take the intro to computer science. Like it's really fun. And so I was like, yeah, whatever. Like I'm not that attached to econ. So then I took intro to computer science and my professor was amazing. He was amazing. He was one of the only people of color in the department. And he was like really passionate about getting like a diverse set of students into computer science and encouraging them, especially women. because we all know the problems. I did not do well. It was like not a good time. I was struggling. So I was in his office for office hours a lot. And he was just really encouraging. He was like, just because you struggle doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue this. Like, if you like this, you should still do it. You're capable. It's just hard and you've never done it. And in hindsight, like, if I didn't have him as my intro professor, I definitely wouldn't have continued with the major, because it was just like, honestly, a lot to deal with. And it's a lot of work. Like, that computer science as a major is like, oh my gosh, it will take over your whole life. And then on my campus, you know, we were in North Carolina, small school. We were a PWI, which stands for primarily white institution. And so there's a lot of work from kind of like BIPOC / minority / marginalized students to improve the culture on campus, and also to build community amongst each other and kind of just take up more space, because there was no space pre-carved out for us before that. My sophomore year, I joined my sorority, which was the Latina sorority on campus. And yeah, it was me and my 7 line sisters. Oh my gosh. I hope that's not wrong. Otherwise, they would be so mad at me. But I think there were 8 of us total. And it totally, like, it completely changed my life, honestly. Because, you know, being from Miami, I'm Cuban. It was very normal. Like, in Miami, like, everyone is Hispanic. Everyone is an immigrant. Everyone came from somewhere. Like, it's very normal. You have culture all over the place. It's not, I mean, there's things to be said. It's in Florida. But it's not very, like, entrenched in like that white American culture like North Carolina is. And so I kind of had this like awakening when I got to college, and I was like, I mean, I'm very Americanized. Like, that's just how I grew up, is how my father raised us, you know. I have no control over that. Like, it was always a joke in high school. It's like, oh, I'm the white friend. I'm like the least Cuban, which isn't the nicest thing to say in hindsight. Like, I would like to just say that whoever's listening, I don't endorse saying that to people, because people's identity are people's identity. Regardless, I didn't associate with my identity that heavily until I went to college. And I was like, who are these people? Like, what is going on? I don't identify with this at all. My hall it was me. And then it was one other like white American student. Her name was also Abi. So we were like this, we were tight, and we were actually roommates the next year. And then it was like a bunch of white girls from like Boston, you know, the Northeast. And they would all like hang out in the lounge together. And for some reason, I was never in the lounge. But whenever I would stop, I'd like talk to them or whatever. And one time I stopped and talked to them. They're like, oh, what are you going to do tonight? And I was like, oh, I'm waxing my mustache. That did not go over well. They looked at me like I was wild. And I was like, oh, I need to find some people who understand what it means to have a mustache. Like, there's something happening here. And then my first year was actually the year that my sorority was founded on campus. And so, like, I think it was end of fall semester, they all crossed. And so all of a sudden, there's a group of 11 Latinas being very proud, being very in community with each other, wearing their letters all over the place. First Latina sorority on campus, like in the history of the college. And so I was like, what is this? And you know, I came from the Posse Scholarship, so a lot of the people in my scholarship were also Latina. And I became really close with this one girl named Val. And so we were besties. And she was like, should we try to join the sorority? And I was like, I think we should try to join the sorority. And so we joined sophomore year. And it just was like really amazing to have a community of people around me. You know, we're Latina based, not Latina exclusive. So we're not all Latina. And then even if we were all Latina, like, Latinos are not a monolith. Like, we're all really different. We all have different cultures. We all come from different backgrounds. And so it was also like very eye-opening to be in community with people who are different from me, in a more diverse community in general, in a lot of ways. And so basically from there, it's just kicked off this insane amount of work I was trying to do on campus of like telling people that we are here, pay attention to us, learn our culture, do things. And then senior year, I became president, and it was super, honestly, wild. Like, when I joined sophomore year, I was like, oh, I'm just going to be an hermana. I'm just going to be a member. I'm not going to do anything. And then junior year, they were like, who wants to run for president? And I was like, me? So it was super cool. And that was also life-changing in a different way, because being president, I was more in charge of cultivating the actual community instead of being a part of it. And so with that comes like a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things to think about, especially when you're cultivating for a diverse community, and you're also cultivating to make sure that like diverse people feel welcome to join in on your community. But also it was kind of like fighting like a resource fight all the time on our PWI, because we didn't have Panhellenic sororities, which are the historically white sororities, but we had eating houses, which kind of the same thing. And then we had white frats. And so it was kind of like there was a Latina sorority, a Latino frat, and then 4 MPHCs, which are historically Black sororities and fraternities. And it was basically us 6 orgs on campus fighting for our lives, telling the campus, please give us money, please give us space, please let us hold our events, please let us do anything. And then, you know, sometimes it oftentimes devolved into us fighting amongst each other for those things, which is 100%, you know, the fault of the institution. Marginalized folks on campus should not be fighting with each other for resources. We should be focused on lifting each other up. And so it was just a wild experience. I was in the student activities office all the freaking time being like, please. And then one time, not to like talk a bunch of mess, but I had to go to president's retreats once a semester. So it was me and then all the other presidents of all the other, you know, Greek, because like eating house presidents were there too, Greek life on campus. And we had to do this little activity where we were like, oh, talk about your plans for the semester. And it was me, and I was paired up with one of the presidents of the white frats. And I'm not saying that white frats don't do stuff, whatever, I guess. But this man had no plan. And I was honestly shook. He was like, 75% of our members haven't paid their dues. We don't know what we're doing. We didn't hit this requirement last semester. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, this guy probably he could probably run his whole org with his eyes closed just because of the resources that the school allows for him. Meanwhile, if we had missed one requirement for the last semester, we 100% would have been like suspended from continuing activity until it was resolved. Like, they would have never let one of the MPHCs or one of the MGOs, which is the Latinx stuff on campus, they would have never let us slip like that. And so it was also very eye-opening because I was like, on campus, like we truly do so much. Like, we're putting on this programming. It's educational. It's engaging. We don't owe it to the students to showcase our culture to them, but we still do it because we care and we want them to learn. We have events where we provide food, good Hispanic food in the middle of freaking North Carolina. Like, we're doing services for these students and they can't even remember our freaking names. They can't even remember that we're there on campus, and they can just miss requirements from the Greek office that we 100% would not have been allowed to miss. And so it was like a really great learning experience, and it was an amazing experience. And I do want to brag a little bit. Under my presidency, we won chapter of the year regionally and nationally. So I would like to think that we did the thing. They still are doing the thing. We will always be doing the thing on campus because my chapter is the best. I had a bunch of other things in the fire, but I was mainly doing work for the sorority. And it was very eye-opening. It was an amazing learning experience. And yeah, I just love the people in my sorority. So it was worth it, even though it was a lot of work. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of just went on a rant about what it's like to be a sorority president.
I like stories. And so I just like listening. And we've spent a good chunk of time together, and like all the time, I'm like, Abby, tell some stories. For those listening, the reason why I ask these questions, and I think this goes without saying, is that when I first met Abby, these qualities that we're hearing the backstory behind are the things that stood out to me, and the reason why I knew that she should be part of making. I have always built Making's team very differently than most places that I've worked at. And it matters less to me the experience that you have directly in tech, or even like, you know, the length of experience, and more about the qualities that exist that can be nurtured and just need the right environment to really grow. I actually didn't know this story until like later. And then it all like all these things made sense. Like, oh my God, okay, yeah. Like now I understand. Okay, so why don't you tell me what happened after college? Because that kind of brings us up to current times. And so share with me a little bit about that journey and finding yourself in this place where we met you.
After college, what an interesting time. What an interesting time. So I graduated college. I'm going to be so upfront and honest for everyone listening. I had no job offers. The school I went to was very much a place where like you had stuff lined up post-grad. Everyone was like, oh, I'm doing consulting. I'm doing this bank job. If you're a tech, you're going to Google, you're going to Amazon, you're doing all these other things, I guess. I don't know. You're going to getting a PhD. But I had nothing lined up. I honestly really, really, really struggled with the landscape of getting a tech job. Like I was in interviews at the time when I graduated. It was pretty much a struggle because I personally find the process for getting a tech job extremely problematic, for lack of a better word. It's extremely mentally taxing. First of all, you have to go through a tech interview where you're like live coding with people, and then a behavioral interview, which I'm great at behavior interviews. It's like chill for me. I can talk. But the tech interviews were awful for me. They're super hard. They're very dependent on how much you practice. And that's extremely dependent on how much time you have to practice. And time is a resource that not everyone has available. And so anyway, I could talk about this forever, literally forever. I just found the process extremely inequitable and unnecessarily hard for no reason, because I agree with you. I think qualities in tech are much more important than the actual hard skills that you have, because every skill that I have that's technical, I have learned. It's not something that I was, born with, or it's not something that I cultivated through experience. You can learn it. I'm very passionate. Like that's why tech boot camps exist, because these skills are things that people can learn. So I was interviewing for these places. I was struggling, and because everything was so hard, I was getting angry because I was like, this is the problem with this industry. Like no one wants to talk about it, but this process is so messed up. And it's the reason why everything is so not diverse. I moved back home to Miami post-grad. So May until September, I was in Miami. And I was like really stressed about interviews and stuff. And I wish I had taken that time to like enjoy my time in Miami, because then I moved to Seattle, which is completely on the other side of the country. And I moved here because my partner moved here. He got a job in tech here. What can I say? I love him. So I followed him. Here, I got a part-time job in HR tech support, which I still work, but not necessarily what I would like to do for the long term. In post-grad life, I kind of very slowly got to this point where I started to deprioritize getting a job in tech for myself because of a lot of reasons. It's just like big tech is not where I find myself aligning ethically. And then also in general, like I didn't think that that's what I wanted for my life long term. I don't want to be a tech worker for forever. I like tech, but I see myself more in like more of a dynamic role, not always coding the tools, but maybe like interacting with people. And so because of that, and because I'm in Seattle, which is a very crafty place, my life kind of like shifted where suddenly crafts were like extremely at the forefront of my life. So I still do. It's like my whole life. I care so deeply about crafts and crocheting, the act of, but also the history of, the impact of, what it can mean for people, what it can mean for society. And so I got really deep into that and exploring that because I was like, this tech job search is sucking the life out of me. What's bringing me joy right now? It's always crafting. And so let me lean into that. And Seattle is just a great place to do that. Everyone here crafts. Everyone here is obsessed with it, like me. And so come August, someone was like, or I think I saw it on Instagram. I don't even know where I heard about it, but Flock Fiber Fest got on my radar. And I was like, what is this? A place where everyone just sells yarn. Do you mean my dream? And so I went, and I think I've told you this, but that day, I just want to tell those listening, I want to paint a picture. I was so down bad that day. I woke up that whole weekend. I was so dejected because I wasn't finding a job. I felt like awful about myself. I was like, oh, what's the point? Like, why am I even in Seattle? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I woke up the day we were going to go to Flock, because I think it was multiple days. I think we went on Sunday. I woke up that day and was like, let's not even go. I'm too depressed. Like, I don't want to leave the house. I can't do this. And my partner was like, no, we're going. Like, you've been looking forward to this. This only happens once a year. Like, we're going to flock. And so I was there. I was so grumpy. I was so like moody. I was literally going to walk right past the making table. I made eye contact with David. And I remember thinking, I love David. This has nothing to do with David and everything to do with me. I remember thinking, I hope that guy doesn't talk to me. Like, I hope that guy doesn't try to talk to me.
Oh, he's going to talk to you.
Did. Yo, he did. And then he did. And then my partner stopped, Neil, and they started talking. So I was like, I guess I'm here now. And then David was like, oh, are any of you engineers? And I was like, I just remember thinking like, no freaking way. Like, there's no way this is happening right now. And I was like, yeah, me. And then that kind of like kickstarted my work with making now. And so I just feel like that whole day was very like universally written. Like, I was very like, where's my life going? How do I want to still pursue stuff in crafts, but you know, I do work in tech. How do I combine that? And then making just like showed up like right in front of me. And I was like, all of a sudden, here were all my answers. And so, yeah, that led me to making. And that was like 6 months ago-ish now, 7 months. I don't know. And it's been a great experience, honestly. I'm so glad I held out for so long.
Yeah, I was in not a great place either at that event. It had nothing to do with the event and had everything to do with just, I was at this weird place of so much change happening. And like, I had not been to like a public facing event for making in quite some time. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, like, everything has changed since, but earlier that year I had gone and gotten a job, and it was, you know, I had to like separate myself to a certain extent, and I didn't really want to be there because it would like hurt. It hurt to like not be able to be fully in it. But also feeling like I was exactly where I was supposed to be in my life and in making. And I remember David was like, you need to ask people like if they're engineers, because like we need engineers. Like, and I had not yet made a decision at that point to like what the next steps were for making. Like, this event had kind of just happened, and we were in this place of like, okay, are we going to go this direction? Or are we going to go this direction? And, you know, David, the eternal optimist, was like, you know, just ask everyone. And I was like, I can barely talk to people right now. Like, I was just like crying in the back over there. Like, I cannot go talk to people right now. We met you at the end of the event, and I had like a couple days to kind of like get over myself. And there was something interesting that happened. Like, I kind of was just standing back and just observing. Like, David was talking to you and Jen was talking to you, and I kind of was just observing. And honestly, I feel like that, I mean, it was really over the next month, but like, that was the start of something. Like, we had Rosemary, but, you know, she was just solo, and you were like kind of the first team member aside from her to start this, you know, equity-based engineering team. But it was really fun because after you joined, I remember Jen and I were talking quite a bit, and we were like, you know, I know Abby's an engineer, but I actually think Abby needs to come to these events with us because like, she's such a personality. Like, she's kind of become mascot in like a very positive, amazing way. Like, so you've since come to a couple events with us, and we went to Sacred Sheep in Portland that November, and you and I ran that booth like a boss. Like that, we had such a system. You also came to New York with us. I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey at making. And this is not to fish for compliments or, you know, positive reviews of any kind. Making is a vessel for people to grow. That is what it's been for me. Like, me being a part of making, it's transformed my life. And just because, you know, I'm a founder and I run the company, that's an aside. Like, it has fundamentally changed. And it has not changed me. It has allowed me to change. It's allowed me to be who I am in a way that other things have not. And it's also allowed me to express who I am in a way that nowhere I've ever been before has allowed me to express. And it's allowed me to connect with people that help me grow. And it's been there. And I see that often with every single person that has worked at making or, and has encountered making. Often that's the same story. And I would love for you to share the role that making's had in your life.
I'd say it's done a lot, honestly. When I first joined, we were a smaller team back then. I hadn't done web development work in a long time because my senior year was very focused on research because I was like, oh, I'll go to grad school. So it had been a long time since I'd done web development work. And then kind of just the whole process of applying to tech jobs had taken down my confidence by a long shot. Being the only person to work on the website at first was really overwhelming. But now, like, my growth and my abilities, not only just like my skills, but my ability to take on new problems that I'm not familiar with, but also like my ability to have faith in myself has increased exponentially because I like look at all the work I've done and I'm like, oh, look, like I did this all by myself. I'm obviously capable. I can obviously solve problems, even if I don't have the idea in my head at the beginning. Like when I first saw the designs for the CMS, I remember panicking. I was like, oh my God, they're going to get rid of me. They're going to realize I'm a fraud. And now it's like almost done. And I'm like, wow, it just is faster for me now. I have more of a line of thinking. It's just cool to see myself built up in that way because I haven't built up my tech skills in a while. So it's made me more confident as a tech person, but also like going to these events, like it's just funny. Because if you ask my partner, I'm like very antisocial. I'm very socially anxious, but then I think I give off that I'm not because a lot of people will tell me like, oh, but you seem so confident. You seem so like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's so funny because inside I'm freaking out. But going to these events like Sacred Sheep and then BKL in January, it's like up to my confidence level, like personality wise, or like my ability to interface with people. Cause by like the third day of BKL, I was like, this is nothing. Like, let's just do this. Like we can do this. We've done this 100 times. And so it's been cool to build myself up in that way also. And I see it reflecting in my personal life. Like I've started going to social things because I'm trying to build a community here. I've started going to things like by myself, which you would have never caught me doing like a year and a half ago. Ask anyone in my life, you would have never caught me going to stuff by myself because I was too stressed. But now I just do it like, and it's casual. It's like not even a big deal. I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm just going to this event and just by myself. Who cares? And so I think it's just been a lot of personal growth for me. And it came to me at such a good time because it lined up with like my post-grad life and like my adjustment. And I think I was very much struggling being in a new place. And it was struggling in a lot of ways, like tech skill wise, personal wise, building a community wise, and making us just help me grow in all of those ways. It's been really hard. Like the work has been hard because, we're a small team trying to do big things or doing big things, not trying. We are. And so sometimes that just means that we have a lot to do because, it's a numbers game. There's just not that many of us. But on the other side of that, it's also very rewarding because we are able to, one, like follow our beliefs and what we want for making and what we want our work to reflect. But also like, it's cool that we're able to do all this on our own. Like I love my little CMS that I've built up and I'm really proud of it. And I think that it's super cool that now I have, like the other day I worked on some problem and it took me like 30 minutes. And I know for a fact when I first started with making, it would have taken me days. And I would just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like, is this growth? Is this improvement? Like, what the heck? And so I think it was really, really hard at first. And I remember being like, what am I doing here? I'm like, what's happening? And now it's just like, just provided a bunch of like opportunities for growth and also just exciting things. Like going to New York in January was like so exciting for me personally. I was like, what is this? The business trip to New York? Like, who am I? So I would say that's how making has just helped me in like all aspects of my life, honestly. And also meet more craft people because I'll go to like craft circles with Jen. And now I know people who I used to know on Instagram. And it's just wild, honestly.
A couple of my like favorite moments with you in our engineering calls. There'll be like a problem and you may volunteer or something, and then you fix something, or like a time where you weren't asked, but then you fixed it. And I knew from my end, I was like, Abby feels like a total badass right now. Like she just fixed this thing that like no one else could fix, no one figured out. And I was like, and she's not going to say anything. She's going to be like, she just like slow rolled like into Slack and was like, hey guys, like I fixed this thing. And I'm like on the back, I was like, I saw it and I had like just the biggest grin on my face and like messaged you. And I was like, how you feeling right now? You feeling real good, huh? And you're like, I'm feeling so good. And it was just like so funny. Another was in New York. Behind the booth, there was like this little closet area that they had made for us to rest. And there was a moment where we realized we had pushed some code that just kind of broke something. And no one on the West Coast like could fix it at that time. And Abby, like very low key, was freaking out. And she was like in the back and she was like looking at it. And I kind of peeked back there and I was like, listen, like, this is not a big deal. Like, don't worry about it. And she's like, I am like so sweating right now. She's like, I need a few minutes. Like, I'm going to fix this. And you were so matter of fact. And then you came out of the back and you're like, I need to go for a walk right now. Like, you were so And I realized at that moment, like, you know, this is your first experience at a lot of these things, like encountering, you know, downtime or, you know, launching things. Like, this is your first launch and of what we're doing. And I just really, it took me back, but it also, like, I really appreciate being able to go through that experience with you, because it's been a long time that I've been doing this, and it is refreshing. Another was, I don't know where we were, but like who were you fangirling like so bad? Like there's so been a couple times that like you see
I remember the first time I met Not Bad Brittany. Oh my God. I was freaking. She was the biggest one that I met. I've been like, oh my God, it's Brittany. What the heck?
There's just been some times where you're like tugging on like my sleeve or something, or like, Jen, you're like, I know who that person is. That person is like so-and-so. Oh, and you're like freaking out.
Yeah.
I love it. You bring such great energy to making. Okay. So to wrap this up, I want you to share what you're excited about for the future. And this doesn't have to be for making, it can be, but like for you.
I mean, I recently told you this, but this week I got a reading and it was basically telling me that I'm exactly where I need to be. And I turn opportunities into experiences. And so I'm kind of just excited to continue exploring this making, and then also my own crafting. It's not a business. It's an operation. It's a situation right now. But meeting all these people through making and being in the craft space has really inspired me to, you know, like, I want to get in there too. I want to be there. And so I'm really excited, especially for the summer, to vend at a couple of festivals, sell my stuff, meet some other artists. I'm excited to feel like I'm actually an artist, because I feel like, you know, I think we have an episode on this, but like the whole art versus craft debate, how a lot of crafters don't view themselves as artists. So I'm excited to build it up within myself. I think ever since joining making, I've learned that like the craft world is much bigger than I thought it was, or it's much bigger than it appears on the outside. I'm like chronically online. So that's also part of the reason why I'm fangirling all the time, because I follow all these people, but it's just interesting to be in it. It goes much deeper than you would expect. And so I'm excited to keep exploring those types of opportunities and like build up my life. Because I think I was very stuck in this mindset of like, my life path is tech worker. And now I'm like breaking out of that. I'm like, oh, it could actually be whatever I want it to be. So yeah, I think that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, I love that.
All right. I feel like that's good.
I feel like that's good.